Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for June 13th, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher moderating. Ralph Kohler is sharing their screen, and we also have Simo Helfton. Go ahead, Ralph.
Thanks, Benji. We're looking at issue number 3370326, refine labels and descriptions for field types. And Benji's suggestion was to, I scroll down, go through the last comments with the feedback I got at the Drupal user group Munich. And
Ralph, just for the sake of the recording, can you briefly step through where it is in the admin interface? Do you see
oh,
this?
apologies. The issue is basically about if you go to structure, content types, and within a content type on the Manage Fields tab, you have the Create a New Field button. And in there, it's basically about the add field, the labels, and the descriptions in the 2 to 3 steps in the dialog modal.
Right. So why not go one more click to illustrate that? Say plain text. Yes. So this is the text that we've been discussing.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah. Ah, someone is honking. It's pretty loud. Okay, so shall we first step through the points that were made during the Drupal Munich user group Munich, and then NW doc?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Um, I can't remember, basically. I'm not prepared for today. We've taken a look in no particular order. On the first step in the dialog module with the list of field types and groups, they commented that some field types might be placed more prominently. For example, finding the link field close to the end felt surprising. Yeah, that was one point that they considered. For context, all of them were long-time Drupal users or backend developers, so tech savvy and experience with Drupal. That is the caveat. But from their perspective, for example, something like link, they considered way more important. And in case many modules add more groups and field types, then it could be pushed even further down the line. So that was their concern.
So on that point, I just think we have to declare it out of scope for this issue,
Yeah.
right? We've also discussed whether media should be top level, whether it should be combined with file upload, and all of that is just way too controversial.
Yeah.
So we want to focus in this issue on the microcopy, and I'm happy to discuss what maybe this should just be alphabetical. Who knows? But that'll have to be a separate issue.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. But that was their main point in the beginning.
Okay.
Um, in regard to the description of the group formatted text with the option to assign text editor, the option to assign sounded odd and off for non-native English speakers. It made them stumble.
Can you show us that in the?
In here, text within markup and formatting with option to assign text editor.
Aha.
That one is basically.
Um, right. So the text on this page is in scope, although it wasn't our primary focus, right?
It was the primary focus as well, because initially we had field on every description included, we had periods, so it is part of this issue from my perspective.
Right. I'm just thinking that we spent a lot more time looking at
Yeah,
the the next step in the
yeah,
process.
that
But
for sure.
yes, this is in scope. Um, and Let's see, do you want to open up the spreadsheet for the interface text that we've been working from?
Second.
And I guess it's the first tab rather than the second tab.
Like field descriptions. No, that's not the one. That's the one. I'll copy.
I have a link to the spreadsheet.
Chat in here. Posted it.
So it looks as though um,
That's the one.
we haven't made any changes from the current markup or the current text for that. Um,
Current draft in column E is what counts. And that contains the text with markup and formatting with option to assign text editor.
so I will say that from a technical point of view, the option to assign a text editor is more about the widget, and this is more about the field type. Um, but and and I actually wonder whether it's important to say that at this point. I guess what is the goal of this text? We want to help people choose whether to click on formatted text and get these options, or whether to click on plain text and get a very similar set of options. Um, long, short, along with summary, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the field settings, and yep, I agree. The text edit settings are not available there. So that's one step later. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So what do you think? Should we mention the editor at all?
If it's default behavior, and I think it is, then it could be mentioned. I think it's nice for beginners.
Okay. So right. The goal is to help the user decide which of these to use, and you think that for non-technical users, it would be helpful to say that the editor is available. Should we say WYSIWYG editor? Um, sort of in what sense is it really optional? What do you have to do to remove it? Um,
I think it's in the input formats. So yeah, so the editor is not field specific; it's format specific. So if kind of it could be if we have formatted text as a group, it could be mentioned in the kind of for all of them at once that formatted text can have editor.
yeah, you're right.
Yep.
And I actually think that's an argument not to mention the editor on this page, because if you mention the editor on this page, then people are going to be looking, where can I enable that? Where can I disable it? And they're
Yeah.
looking in entirely the wrong place. So maybe instead of talking about the editor, we should talk about the formats.
Are you? Yeah.
And especially, this is a relatively recent change to Drupal, right? There used to be a contributed module that let you set the allowed text formats per field, and that got pulled into Drupal core. And now we have it, and so maybe um, you know maybe better late than never. Having made that change, we should say more about the format at this point when choosing a field type. So maybe something like text that supports markup, comma, with a choice of text formats. Although I'm saying text twice, that's not ideal.
Um, text format. Text with markup. Or something like text with markup and the option to assign text formats.
Now, I don't want to emphasize too much those possibilities. I think as long as we're mentioning the format, it'll give people the idea. Am I being too optimistic? I also put my proposed text a few lines down in the spreadsheet. If you scroll a bit.
Oh, yeah. Text that's box.
And even though it is a little awkward to have the word text twice in that description, I sort of want to do that because, that's how it appears under the configuration menu, configuration, content authoring, text formats, and editors.
That context, having text twice, it's okay from my perspective. Text that's box with a choice of text. But with that, it could be understood you could only pick one text format. While, yeah, you have the option to assign several.
Right.
Or none at all, even. Is it possible even? Safe? Yeah, it's possible.
And by the way, from a very technical point of view, if you look at how it's stored in the database, the difference between a plain text field and a formatted text field is that the formatted text field has both a value for the text that's saved and then a second database column for the format. So it's, you know, from the most technical point of view, it's quite accurate to emphasize the formats and not the text editor at this point.
Yeah.
So we somehow want to get across the idea that text formats can be applied to this field, that there's some configuration option. I guess I could argue that the field itself, when you save one field, you have to make a single choice. Although you're certainly right that when you're configuring the field, you can choose more than one.
If you have more than one, then you have basically a select field on the node edit form.
Right? Depending on permissions. Um, let's move on to the other points in the issue comment and come back to this.
Yeah. Looking at the description for the 3 field types within formatted text, the first remark was about the order of the descriptions. One second, I move that side by side, then we can go in. Create a new one. Format text, yeah. They considered the detail about if a field type is a single row or multi-row. The most important detail instead of efficient storage was the first bullet point on the field type for short text. Yeah, that's the point. Efficient storage wasn't considered that important, while single one-line or multi-line was way, way more important from their perspective. That is the first point. Even though the group title is formatted text, short is explicitly mentioning that you have a certain formatting options. The other two don't have that mention. By explicitly naming it for one field type, the indirect assumption conclusion is that it is not available for the others.
Uh-huh.
And aside reconsidering the weighing of bullet points for the different field types by importance, they also suggested to reconsider the grouping of text related to field types. Instead of going with plain text and formal text, the suggestion was, as already mentioned, to make the single and multi-row aspect more prominent by grouping by single and multi-row, by single row and multiple row, meaning that you have, instead of plain text and formal text, on the first page a group single line and multiple line.
Or perhaps short text and long text.
Yeah, it's a labeling then, but
yeah,
just grouping wise, that was their suggestion.
Okay, again, I'm going to say that's out of scope for this issue.
Oops, I go again.
So were they suggesting that we reorder the 3 choices, long, long with summary, short, or just that we reorder the bullet points within?
The reordering was just about the bullet points, and they considered efficient storage not that important compared to the line detail. It was integer. The next point is about numbers.
Oh, well, let's stay on
Oops, apologies.
The formatted text for a while. So do you agree with that? Shall we just use a one-line text field for input? Should we move that to the top of the bullet list for short text? Shall we swap it with the efficient storage line?
I might add one other detail from the NW group that is in a similar vein. they suggested another detail, moving the recommended for to the top of those bulleted lists. They argued basically for less technical people, the most important detail is at first for what type of context a field is recommended for, and then they still have the option to go on if they want to know the details. But from a content design perspective, putting the most important detail on top and then the rest with the background information. Just wanted to add that here as well, because I thought in regards of the ordering that it might be also relevant.
Uh-huh. So I guess the reason I think that we put it at the bottom is for consistency with other field types, where typically the last bullet point was an example of how it would be used. And so even though the wording is different, we're saying recommended for rather than example. I still think that for consistency, I like where it is currently. Um, and of course, the end of a bulleted list is the second most prominent place. So
Yeah,
it's not as if we're burying it in the middle.
yeah, that's true. I just wanted to raise it because there was a broad consensus around attendees for that point, and therefore I thought it was at least relevant to raise and to mention.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Simo, what do you think about that suggestion?
I don't know. I think because I think the first things are something that it is, and the last one is something that is recommended. So it's kind of a first it's facts, and then the last one is opinion. So in a way, I'm not sure if opinion should be first.
Um, yeah, so I'm inclined to leave it as it is, although I wouldn't fight for it if consensus emerges to take that suggestion.
Yeah, and I don't think it's so important.
I
Okay,
would
go ahead.
I think after the meeting, I just add the comments from the NW Duck meeting also as a comment that is on record, but I also agree keeping it at the end for now. But reconsider the rest of the other bullet points, the ordering where we were at.
Okay. Um,
Oh, and
uh,
just one other detail, because we are on that page also from the NW Duck, is on efficient storage is again the if one thing is said, like also does one saying efficient directly implies that the other two are not efficient. So is long text not efficient compared to short text? That was the question or the comment in that context.
I believe that's the case. I think yeah, databases are most efficient if every row in the database has the same length field, and dealing with variable length fields, which long text is, I think is a little less efficient. But I don't pretend to be an expert on database design, though, so I could be wrong.
Okay.
Um, the current text says something about that, doesn't it?
Yeah, as you can see, efficient storage. Okay. So in regard of the order, I go over to the Google Sheet to step 2. So should it be reordered?
I mean, why would you use short text if not for the gain in efficiency? I mean, it just limits your options. Um, I
Uh,
really think of the one line text field as being something to try to help people picture it in their minds, not be too abstract. And I think that the efficiency is actually the main reason you would want to use short text rather than long text.
I think maybe the sole change I would make is maybe move the uses a one-line text field for input at the first position and then on the second efficient storage, so that you basically directly see this is a one-line text field, this is a text area with multiple rows. And yeah, corresponding to that also uses a text area move to the first place. That way it might be clearer.
I'm
And
willing to go with I'm willing to go with that. Sima, what do you think?
I don't
Sima,
have a strong opinion about that.
okay. So if we did have a consensus in the group you were talking to, Ralph, then yeah, I think we can make that change. Do you want to edit it now in the spreadsheet and we can
does
implement
it
it?
really? One
I
sec.
might find time in the next day or two to implement whatever changes we agree on.
Those easy changes I can easily do. Uh, let's do it that way instead of row buff. Otherwise, that way, yep. And do it that way. Okay. Oh, yeah, I did it in the wrong column. Anyway, I will remember. Move one and multi to the first position. I'd make a comment, a note here, and we'll do the update.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then there was still the question of whether mentioning bold and italic in just one of the three uh, might lead people to think it's not available in the other two.
Which point?
I think the remaining comment on this page was where it says ideal for titles and names that need markup for bold, italic, or links. And their comment was that um, saying that for just one of the three suggests that bold and italic might not be available for the other two.
Okay.
Um, and since that's sort of explicitly not a differentiator, maybe this would be a good thing to put at the top between label and choose a field type. Now that we have the option of doing that, um, and instead of just relying on the title of this modal, add field formatted text, um, which I find awfully easy to ignore. Um, maybe we should add some summary text that applies to all three.
Yep.
And here would be a good place to provide more detail than we were able to on the first screen. We could perhaps even, well, maybe it would be difficult to implement a link to the text formats page. Um, but let's go back to the spreadsheet
Yeah.
and
Do an overview.
column C is the one we want to look at.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, so we could start by sort of repeating the text that we had on the previous screen and say something like formatted text fields allow HTML markup. Should we be explicit about what markup means? Um, and then say something about how each field can be configured um, to to allow one or more of the configured text formats. And since it's separate sentences, I won't feel guilty about using the word text twice in the sentence. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just a thought, if we are now adding an overview, then we could basically shorten the description on step 1 and simply say text with markup and formatting, and that's it. That way you have the option either a text without markup and formatting and a text with markup and formatting, and the detail about the text formats and that you're able to assign several, that it could easily go into the overview as you already did ideate on.
Uh-huh. So I guess the question is whether mentioning text formats is going to help people make the choice in the first screen. If we can save them from the extra click before they see that detail, then that's a good thing. But
Yeah.
if just saying markup and formats is enough, then yeah, we can shorten the previous text. The text that we couldn't decide on earlier in the meeting, right? 20
Yeah.
minutes ago.
And it would also ease the complications with the option to assign bit where people stumbled across understanding. So, and I think text formats is implied and included under formatting. So it is overcomplicating things in the first step from my perspective that way. But maybe let's first ideate on the overview first, and then we can think of, we can strip the reference in the first step.
All right, so I put in a suggestion there. It's a little on the verbose side.
Oh, thank you.
For instance, we could easily strike the words of the and just say one or more configured text
Yeah.
formats.
Yep. I wonder, would it make sense to say formatted text fields that allow HTML markup?
So that's no longer a complete sentence.
Oh, okay.
Are we still allowed to allow PHP format as well? Or is that something that we got rid of?
That's a good question. Certainly, that's not the primary use of formatted text fields in a content management system. Um, and right, I did ask whether we should say explicitly HTML markup or just markup. Um, I would say that's an unusual case, perhaps an edge case, and we should focus on the primary use of these, which is HTML. But uh, but that's just my opinion. And part of the reason I went with something slightly verbose is that there's plenty of room there. I think even in the mobile view that I don't think we have to be as terse as possible. It's not like the label for a field value. Go ahead.
And just one thought, would it make sense to add a link to the text formats page for, yeah, I put it in parentheses to illustrate. Oops, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, it would certainly be helpful. I don't know whether it's technically feasible given the current structure. Um, right, these are the text we're using here is typically specified in a YAML file, right?
Oh, oh, right. Okay, then that might be problematic. But it would be useful if you could basically alt click and open in a second tab
Yes, it
that
would.
way. Okay. I remove the parentheses again.
Gas liners should be inspected on a regular basis. It has been 4 years. And our spring special that we offer every spring is coming to an end very shortly.
Um,
Rates that we offer all year for a level 1 inspection and cleaning. We'd like us to come out and clean the gas through with our lowest rates of the year. Please give me a rate.
so shall we go with that for now?
Yeah, I think so. Should
I-
we shorten the description on the first step?
Um,
Because in any way, text editor isn't accurate anymore.
right, and I guess I put my suggestion in column D.
Text, yeah. Text was
Oh,
choice.
on this spreadsheet, that is the right column to use. Okay. Um,
Oh. With a yeah, okay. Would be fine with that as well.
I mean, I'm of course biased, but I like what I suggested. But, um,
Yeah, we can go with it. We can go with it. Okay.
so do you want to copy that and paste it into row
In
14?
the yeah. It's shorter, so
And it's more accurate.
yeah, that's for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a little more than 10 minutes left. I think we're mostly through the list of comments.
Yeah. In regard to the description maximum value, that is on the numbers field. Maximum value depends on the system, on the integer number field type. Attendees have asked where would it be possible to find that kind of information if it's mentioned here. It's about that comment here.
No. Like, does that depend on the database? Does it depend on PHP? Um,
Yeah, but that statement raises questions, and they were curious.
well, I would say if someone wants to be more specific, they have to do the work of figuring out exactly what it depends on. And again, this is not text that we can easily make dynamic. This is text that's I think mostly entered in YAML files.
Yeah.
Am I right about that? Is this text in YAML files?
No, it's that one is in the bullet points are usually in PHP files.
Okay, so we could make this more dynamic. Um,
Yeah, but out of the scope for the issue. Making things dynamic here.
yes, exactly. Good point.
Yeah. I make a note. Maximum value integer dynamic. Follow up, maybe. Okay, the next point was on the file upload. The point they made was it was confusing to see the example of JPEG, PNG, Web, PGIF for the file as well as for the image field type.
So I guess we put that in there because we wanted to be clear that it was not that the generic file field was not restricted, could be anything.
Yeah.
Um, and should we be sort of concentrating on common uses or should we?
To be honest, personally for me, it wasn't a big deal because from my perspective, it makes sense to clarify that images are also files, strictly speaking, and therefore it's totally valid to exemplify and clarify that basically an example for a file is also an image. So
Right.
it was
And
just a point they've raised from their perspective.
Yeah, and I think the second bullet point under image is pretty clear about what's missing if you use a generic file field for images.
Yep.
And I'm sure there are use cases where people just use a generic file field as a dumping ground, and people put whatever file type they want into it, including images. So I'm inclined to leave it as it is.
Yep. Me too. And Simo?
Yeah, me too.
Okay. The next point is basically within the reference group why the other field type label was considered confusing and sort of ambiguous. And as on a side note, it looks fixed again, but the last few days when I've revisited the field, the bullet point was gone. I have no idea why. Because I know, Benji, that you fixed it, and for whatever reason, the bullet point was gone and it was intended. No idea. But yeah, about the other is just a not that useful label.
Uh, well, did they have a positive recommendation for what to use instead?
Mm,
And is it the word other, or is it the description underneath it that they were complaining about?
no, it's the label other they
Ah,
were
okay.
complaining about. But just a thought I had, um, why not simply go with custom or bespoke or the wrong term, but yeah, custom.
Um, you're still choosing from a list of options, which doesn't
True,
seem like custom to me.
that is true. But is there a term in English that would convey you're picking from a predefined list?
All options. Um, I mean, it's common in forms to have sort of a radio buttons of options and then one that says other. And when you click in the other, you get some progressive disclosure and a text field opens up. And although it's not the same user interaction, um, that is basically what we're allowing here. And other is the standard label for that use case.
Hmm. Okay.
This is a little bit confusing because in the end, the selection is done only in the next phase, because you can also change for those before. So it's kind of all of them are just form presets for the next one.
Right. Um, so I would say, unless they're going to suggest an alternative, I'm happy to consider alternatives, but I can't think of anything that's clearer than other.
Me neither.
It would be more precise if it would be any, but it's not helping the user.
Yeah, and we just have a couple of minutes left. So the last bullet point on the issue was, in general, it would be helpful to provide clear and brief instructions for media, file, image, when to use which. Um, And I,
That's the
I would like to say that's out of scope. Very contentious.
but strictly speaking, isn't that's the purpose of that description here.
Yes.
So the only thing I've commented in comment number 52, I guess we should move that one up between label and choose a field type, like the others, as an overview.
Ah. Okay, we can certainly look at doing that.
I'll try if it works out, if I'm able to move it. But maybe if I fail, I'll ping you.
Sure.
And then you can take a step. Because I guess that might be the same problem. Because that one would be going into the YAML file, and then we have the problem with the link.
True.
It is linking to the media help page, and that way we might have a problem.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do. We are just about at time. Any last comments?
No.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, let's hope that we can actually get this in soon,
Yeah.
or at least
Or I
get some other eyes on it.
Yeah, I get a review would be a good first step. But I'll make the changes and then we'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye bye.